Hey, everybody. Welcome to SF Indie Fest, your eclectic punk rock film festival of San Francisco. It's a weird world where we live in, and we always kind of value the idea about film festivals as being these live events, which obviously aren't quite available this year. But we're lucky enough to kind of bring filmmakers from around the world to talk about their films that you've just seen. So we're lucky enough today to have director Nick Brandestini of Sapelo. How are you doing, Nick?
Good. Thanks for having me, Chris. It's an honor
Yeah,
to be.
most definitely. I've been obviously a long admirer of your work, and if you guys haven't had a chance to see some of Nick's early films, definitely give it a look up on Google and go deep dive of lots of interesting places that he's had a chance to tell stories from.
Likewise, Chris. Likewise, by the way, as you know.
Yes, as both a programmer and as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So maybe a good place to start, Nick, is how did you kind of hear about the goings on in Sapelo, and what made you decide that there was a film here to make?
So it started about 4 years ago, and I had never heard of the place Sapelo Island or the Galagici people ever before, and it was a bit of a coincidence how I found this place. And I had been. I just finished, the festival tour with my previous film, which took place in Alaska. And it was also about a community. And it was, I had good experience making it, and the people there seemed to like it. And so I was just curious to find another place that has like an interesting history and a different way of life from mine in Switzerland. And so I was traveling through the southern part of the US, like Louisiana and Florida. And eventually I found this cultural center in Georgia called Gichi Kunda. I mean, it's a long story. I'm just making it a little shorter. And the guy or the couple who ran that place, this Gichi Kunda Cultural Center, gave me an article about Sapelo to read. And it was by a German magazine. And German
Cool.
is my native language. And so he thought, I might be interested in reading that. And so I read it, and Cornelia Walker Bailey, who turned out to be the main character of the film, was already mentioned in this article as a prominent voice of the island. And so I was just very interested in getting a chance to meet her, and they made it possible for me to get in contact with her. So I went over there, and there was somebody who guided me around on the island, and I did meet Cornelia, and we started talking, and that's how it all began.
Very cool. Well, it turned out to be a really kind of thoughtful and beautiful film. So, one of the kind of things that often comes up in documentary filmmaking over time, but also now, is this idea of like the kind of role of the kind of outsider, and obviously there are kind of trade-offs for being, closely connected to community versus being an outsider and coming in. How do you kind of navigate that and kind of develop the relationships that that we kind of see in your film?
Yes, that's a very good question, and of course I was very aware of that fact that it's it can be touchy or difficult if you're not from the community to make a portrait of that community. So I think I try to just be very, very learn a lot about the people and the history of the place, and not be in a rush, and just to immerse myself as much as I can. Of course, I'm still an outsider, but just to take a lot of time to really get to know the people, and then start filming once I feel that they are comfortable with me being around. But it's still, I'm encouraging everybody there of any community to do their own film. So I'm aware that I'm an outsider, but I think the fact of being an outsider is addressed in the film as well. You have other people, not just me. I mean, I'm making a film, but there's other people coming there, and the community is critical of people coming in. Be it just, they like visitors, but they don't want to have their the soul or the fabric of the community changed too much, which of course is totally understandable. So I tried to navigate this as much as possible to get it right. Hopefully I succeeded, but that's, for the people there to decide.
Well, from our experience, I think it seems like you did a really good job, and looking forward to visiting at some point in time. What is it? How did you know? Obviously, I just think the location and the setup in itself just makes it very curious. But how did you know that there was kind of a story to tell?
That's always at the beginning I didn't know, because I was initially attracted by the history of the place and reading about Cornelia, and I knew that I wanted to have her in the film. But then once I found out that she and her husband Frank had adopted a lot of kids over the last 20 years, that kind of made me interested in getting to know them as well. And once I met Marcus and Jonathan, and they were very charismatic and fun and interested in what I was doing, there, I knew that I would focus on that family. And of course, Cornelia had wrote a book called God Doctor. What is it called? I keep forgetting the title of the name. It's a tricky name. God Dr. Buzzard and the Bolito Man. And I read that book, and she talks about her time growing up in the 50s, when she was around the age of Jonathan and Marcus, who are in the film, and JJ, the third brother. And once these things came together with knowing about the book and her adopted kids, that I knew that there was a film there.
Well, one thing that just struck me is that, being familiar with some of your films, that there's always children that are characters within the communities that you show, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And so often it seems in films that the youth of communities are often kind of ignored in the representations. And so, like, how do you kind of approach it, of like finding that there's this kind of, balance that you feel like, how do you kind of find the characters you want to include in the film?
In this case, it was quite natural. Like I said before, once I, spoke with Cornelia and she was on board in making the film, it was, they were just around her household, so It was just natural that I would focus on them. And I think, what is interesting for me as a documentary filmmaker and as somebody who makes long-term projects, I'm involved in the filming for several years. So with young people, especially, it's interesting to see, how things change over time. And I think you even see it in the look of the kids in the film. So I think it's interesting as an audience, to kind of follow that journey.
Yeah. Well, and I guess also I'm just thinking, you wind up in a lot of kind of extreme environments, and, I guess with children, right, is that they're kind of at a point in the decision making where what's ahead for their future. And so it seems like a lot of these places, there's it's kind of a moment in time when things can really change for a community, and so, like, as you kind of look forward, do you feel like the island that the kind of vigilant efforts to kind of maintain it as it is now will be successful, or do you imagine 10 or 20 years from now it might be something different?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. Cornelia always wanted to keep some of the traditions, alive. And there's one example I like to bring up. It's in the film briefly, where she talks about trying to build an economic base where they grow like several types of, agricultural things. And that's one of the projects that is actually taking off now, because there's been a lot of development in that regard, which is very promising and nice. And she would be very proud to see this happening. But at the same time, there's still changes are still continuing to happen. Like people who lived there are moving out, and there's problems with the taxes are going up, because of some of the newer houses being built. Kind of changes the whole environment. And so I think, I don't know how much it will change, but I can't say, oh, no, this place will always be the same. There's no change whatsoever. I cannot say that. That would not be realistic. It's just a matter of how fast this is changing. The good thing about Sapelo Island is that 90% is owned by the state of Georgia, or maybe it's
Mm,
95%
okay.
actually. So it's like a natural reserve, and the people there are really involved in keeping it that way. So if there's like tourism, there's more like the ecological type of tourism, and they definitely will avoid, like you have on some of the other islands in the area where it's like big hotels being built. That's not happening, luckily, and they wouldn't want that to happen.
And I just think about as a kind of like for production on it, like what sort of challenges did you wind up dealing with it filming there? I mean, I'm just imagining it probably gets pretty hot and humid, and there's a lot of water around. Um, you how any production hurdles that you had to kind of deal with in making the film?
There's a lot of mosquitoes. That was crazy. I mean, that was really, and I was filming a lot of stuff, in a very moist area and in the forest and in the marshlands and all that. And there's alligators. I mean, they're not crazy dangerous, but I mean, when first time I saw one of those things, I was really shocked, because I mean, this is such a prehistoric looking crazy animal. I was just like dumbfounded when I first saw one of them just walking around the road. And so, I mean, you have that, and then you have challenge. I mean, there's all good challenges. I mean, I love places that are hot. I mean, I did a film in the desert previously, and then one in Alaska where it's very cold. And now I don't think anything in particular with the environment. But as a filmmaker, it's always you're always under pressure to kind of be there when there's something interesting happening, and so that's always in the back of my mind. And I mean, I know some of the events that are happening. I try to be there to film that, but you never know because it's real life. So it's just always, you hope for for interesting things to happen and be able to capture those moments.
Well, neat. And so can you remind me? So the film in Alaska is Children of the Arctic. Is that right?
Yes.
And then what was the film in Death Valley? Was it called Death Valley or
it was called the Darwin, which
Darwin?
is
Right. Yes.
yes,
So
which was
Darwin.
the name. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
That's the name of the town, Darwin. It's like around 30 to 50 people living there, and the heat there was a bigger problem than on Sapelo Island. Yeah,
absolutely. So what is it that you think as kind of an artist, as a filmmaker, that kind of draw you to these kind of extreme rural places, and then also in the United States?
I think initially I wanted to do so this is my third film, and they happen to all be take place in the US, and that's somewhat of a coincidence, but I did want it to have, I wouldn't want to make a Swiss German film because that's just a small audience, and I do like to have a film seen by bigger, more people, and I like to visit places that are out in the world. So it just happened to be 3 US communities. That's what I've been interested so far, but I don't know what the next project will be. It could be something totally different. It could be somewhere in Asia or somewhere in Africa or somewhere, probably maybe Europe. I have no idea. I don't know yet. We'll see.
Well, you've created another great film here, and thanks again for sharing it with us. Again, thanks again, Nick, director of Sapelo, and we'll look forward to seeing what you have coming next. What's the best way to kind of follow your work as a filmmaker, and then also if we want to kind of spread the word about your newest film?
You go to sapelofilm.com, or to find us on Facebook, and we post all kinds of news. I'm looking at it right now about things in the community, and then upcoming screenings, things like that. So we regularly update that. sapelofilm.com. Are you looking at it right now?
Well, I had a little Zoom hiccup there while you were talking about it, as is the
Okay.
technology of the day. But the good thing is we reported what you had, and so while I didn't hear what you said, the audience did. Thanks again, Nick, and we'll look forward to seeing your next film, and keep on exploring the world and capturing great stories.
All right. Thank you, Chris.